We have a terrific task ahead of us. We have a shattered world around us, and we must help to rebuild it.
Сегодня еще раз обращаюсь ко всем гражданам России.
The President of the United States.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Hello and welcome back to the fifth episode of the Seats of Power podcast. Today we're actually joined by a very special guest, Miirko Sant.
Grazie, very special. What a nice compliment.
I mean, every guest will be a special guest at this point. However, obviously we're joined by the usual, suspects, me, Jake, and Kyle and John Paul, JP.
We've become the usuals now.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we are the usual, the host. Yes, you would expect the host to be there. Anyway, obviously you kind of did go a bit viral in Malta.
I wouldn't say go viral. There were two clips, 3 clips, which were not bad.
No, you definitely went viral from my perspective, put it that way. Not just because you went to New York and, basically supported Trump, which I think is something that a lot of people don't have the guts to do. Even if they honestly believe so. But even with Lenhek and the interviews he did before the European candidate election, it really did make waves in the multi-social media space. And part of the reason why we wanted you as a guest was kind of to talk about this culture of, I guess, shame you have when you express political opinions that aren't popular and you get shamed for it. What's your kind of take on that?
Oh, there's a lot to say, I think. Ironically, I don't like labels in general in politics because people are different. You can't put people into a certain bracket and say they're it and that's that. For example. You mentioned the clip of me in front of Trump Tower with the mega hat. A lot of people, it's true, like you said, they wouldn't find the courage to do it. I mean, I obviously, to be honest, when I posted that clip, I just posted it on my Facebook page for my friends and, everyone who follows me on Facebook to see. And then the media houses, it was like 1 a.m. over there, I think, at that time. And then I woke up 7 a.m. in New York, it was like afternoon in Malta, and I see like hundreds of notifications. I'm like, what the hell happened over here? And I see that like 4 different media houses posted that clip. None of them contacted me, but that's okay. I mean, I guess it's public, so
Technically they can.
Technically they can. But honestly, I'm not the type of person to hide what I really think. Mm-hmm. I think I always said, even publicly, what I think about anything, both domestically and both with regards to foreign elections like the United States.
But I think you kind of expected a similar sort of reaction.
Oh, I expected this because, these are the same type of people who, when I interviewed Norman Lowell or when I interviewed Joseph Muscat, you say, you can't give a platform to those people. But then at the same time, when I interviewed Cyrus Engineer or when I interviewed Sandra Gauci or anyone from the left in general, if you could call it the left, no one said anything. Not people from the right didn't say anything. It's only these people which apparently have some type of problem with candidates who are democratically contesting, saying that, you can't give them any space to voice their opinion. I think, when it comes to things like this, it's the people's judgment which matters. We've seen the people's judgment last election. We've seen the people's judgment in November with Donald Trump's win, where this time he not only won the Electoral College, but he also won the popular vote. And, the irony is that these are the first people who would label people like Donald Trump as fascists, when they're the same people who have been actively trying to silence his supporters' opinion since day one, even before he contested for the first time in 2016. So if you ask me who the real fascist is, even though I don't really believe in that type of terminology with regards to these candidates, I don't even think they know what fascist means. I would argue that silencing the opposition is one of the main characteristics for fascism.
Yes, I completely agree with you.
Strong opening statement for this episode.
No, and that's precisely
Strong
why
opinion.
why I think you're a great guest to have
exactly.
because
Thank you,
because
I
you won't hold your tongue essentially.
No, not at all.
And you won't allow anyone else to control your tongue.
No, not at all.
Which is a principle of free speech, after all. And in a democracy, you're supposed to have free speech.
Listen,
And,
what I think about free speech is that, like, listen, as long as it's nothing which goes against the law, as long as you don't use your speech to intentionally harm or offend people without any basis, then you are totally free to discuss your opinion. And at the same time, people are also totally free to tell you that your opinion is stupid. That's what I think it is. But you can't go around telling people, listen, you can't support him because he's insert any adjective here. Or else tell people, listen, you can't platform him because this is his opinion. No, I think you have to leave the people free to discuss their opinion, and it is the people's judgment which counts first and foremost.
I think there's 2 points you're making there that I agree with. One is the fact that in a democracy, you should have free speech, you should have free expression, and everyone should be allowed to say whatever they think, their opinions. Now, in a system, like you said, when you have people who want to essentially cancel you or just criticizing you exponentially because you platform someone like Norman Lowell, I understand the outrage with Norman Lowell, but if you're trying to put him off from being even heard, then you're kind of saying the people basically don't have the mental capacity to decide for themselves whether he is someone good to vote for or not.
That's what happened with RTK, because the RTK didn't even, and they were fined, I believe.
Let me with regards to this, I think that the private broadcaster, even though I disagree with them, I think they should be free to invite and not invite whoever they want. But then,
exactly.
To me, it's evidently clear in that case. I respect a lot of what they do to RTK. There aren't really people which engage in political dialogue publicly as much as Andrew Whatsopardi in this case. But I disagree with the opinion that he doesn't invite him because he personally does not agree with his opinion. Leave it up to the people to decide who they want in office and who they don't want. I think in this case, since they are a private network, they can not bring him if they want. But I think the problem in this case would be someone like PBS not inviting him. I'm sure. I know they did. I think he himself did not accept, which is a shame because I would expect him to go. But yeah, that's basically what I think.
Yeah, and even with the RTK argument with Norman Lowell, he himself, I don't know if it was him or someone from Imperium or just the people, they said if they invited him, they said that if they invited him, he wouldn't have turned up anyways. But you still invite him.
Of course. It's the same, even in debates.
In the spirit of free expression.
Yeah, exactly.
Even in debates, I've heard that there was I'm not sure if it was a university debate or any debate by any of the student organizations. I don't want to name the organization by name because I'm not sure if it's...
I think I was at the one you're mentioning, yeah.
And they were internally discussing whether or not they should invite Norman Lowell. Someone came to ask me for an opinion. I told them, you have to. You have to. He's one of the candidates from one of the minor parties running. You can't not invite a person just because you don't agree with him, period. That's the... this is the same thing we've seen in America all this time. You had Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Donald Trump was going on every single podcast for 3 hours, 2 hours. Those are the type of candidates you want to vote for. People who, for a long period of time, can keep you engaged. You listen to their opinion. You see that they are actually a person. And on the other side, you had Kamala Harris, who didn't want to do long-form interviews. And then it's a question. You see this phenomenon of non-establishment politicians taking public office around the world, even in Europe. And there's no wonder because you have these establishment politicians which are afraid of interviews. Maybe we can discuss further upon this point later in this program. And it's no wonder that because people don't like fakeness, people don't want to see fake politicians running for office.
I think personally what has happened is due to the kind of advancement of social media, specifically podcasting, it has kind of changed the dynamic of how people view politicians, in that before podcasting or long form video content, they would just hear politicians have speeches. Essentially, they're all written, they're all scripted,
it's
and
very generic.
there's not authenticity to that.
Exactly.
Now, with Trump, with the example you're pointing, is that the guy did 3-hour podcasts, 2-hour podcasts with nothing written. He is just talking as himself. At least there's authenticity now. Whether obviously you agree with his politics or not, that's up to you. But you can see authenticity.
But
In fact,
he's giving you something to agree with. Than the other side, she did not even did she not do. And I don't side with anyone. Not even did she not do long form. She didn't even do short form interviews as well.
No,
She did
really.
nothing. She did like 3 interviews.
there was one with, I believe, 60 Minutes where
And that was just
where they
edited.
edited out
It was edited.
her answer and then changed it for the actual release on TV, which is
that's
insane.
a factor. I believe that's a factor in why Trump won the election as well. Maybe a smaller factor, but he put
think,
himself out there as well.
To be honest, I think the biggest factor with Trump winning the election was Twitter, genuinely X.
I wouldn't really agree.
Because I'll tell you why. Because this CBS 60 Minutes interview that was edited, people would not know if Twitter was the same as it was before. In my opinion, people would not know about that.
Yeah, fair enough. But do you think that the 60 Minutes interview was that big of a?
Not the 60 Minutes interview per se.
Just the whole.
But
thing.
I'm saying there's so many instances of those types of, I guess, fakeness by politicians that is regularly getting exposed now on X.
Yeah, fair enough.
That I think that changed a lot of people's minds. I mean, you have a Republican president who's won every single, the House, the Senate, the popular vote, the Electoral College for the first time since Reagan, and I think still he outdid Reagan in some aspects. So. It has to have had some effect. I think it's the biggest factor personally because I'm active on X, so I can kind of see what's going on.
It's really good.
It is really good.
It really is the best, and I think Elon Musk has done a wonderful job with X. Before you had X permanently suspending users because of their political beliefs. Back when it was Twitter, they suspended the president of the United States.
On completely false premises.
That's one of them. It was basically at that time a megaphone for the far left, Antifa, students of Berkeley to voice out their opinion, whilst all other type of discourse on X was censored. I remember I used to use Twitter like before Elon Musk bought it, and all you'd see over there was basically left-wing propaganda, like with no other side to counter the arguments. You have a balanced playing field.
Yes.
And one of the things I was saying not recently, like 2-3 months ago, Alex Saliba, Maltese MEP, he went to the European Parliament and he was basically bashing X for misinformation. I'm sorry, X is the only social media network, which has a system of community notes where, like, if something is false, it can be verified or disproved.
Yeah.
On TikTok you don't see that.
No.
On Facebook you don't see that. On Instagram you don't see that.
Furthermore to that, you don't just not see that, but you see the fact checks that happen come from the same exact sources that during the last 3 or 4 years nobody trusts anymore.
Yeah, but this is a bit of an issue with Maya. I don't know what I think really about Elon Musk personally, but do you guys not see maybe an element of bias there? He openly supported Trump. He owns the company as well.
But listen, as a private individual, I think he's free to.
No, he's entitled to it. But saying X is just a big factor, I think it's just because
I was going to comment on. I don't think X was like one of the main. I think it was a big factor, but I don't think it was like the principal factor. I still think inflation was an issue.
Yeah, fair
Joe
enough.
Biden not dropping out earlier.
Exactly.
Kamala Harris being an established politician. I think people are. We have to remember that America has been. So first they had the Bush family in power for over that period from the 1990s until 2007. And the Clinton dynasty as well. 2 terms of Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton running in 2008 against Obama, Hillary Clinton again in a rigged primary where she allegedly beat Bernie Sanders, And the American people, they were so tired of these families wanting to sort of control their respective political spheres, that when an outsider like Trump came, or when someone like Elon comes and basically opens everything wide to the public, where everyone can say everything, that people enjoyed it because it was something different from what they had in the past. You have controlled media as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things, genuinely insane things to look at now is when you see Trump's appearances in, like, before he announced his candidacy in 2015 or 14 on The View or on CNN or on Jimmy Fallon or things like that. And you see, they all love him. But then as soon as he announced, as soon as he runs, he's automatically Hitler. And it's insane when you see, like, that's the exact problem, I think, with the media sphere, with the legacy media sphere, at least, with mainstream. Now, when it comes to podcasting, that's the beautiful part of it, because it's much more decentralized. There's not really, I mean...
It's more independent.
Okay, it depends. It depends, obviously. For example, we're doing this on radio, so we have to adhere to radio laws. But people who do it independently, they don't have to adhere to speech rules or whatever.
I mean, technically, you still have some directives, regulations, depending on where you're posting it as well.
Obviously, yes, and it depends.
You always have something holding you back. But I guess that's the freedom with X now, because there's such little regulation. Yeah, so
there's little
open,
regulation coming from X directly.
Exactly.
X only, generally speaking, they act within the laws of whatever country. So, for example, if I'm in Malta and I say something that is illegal to say in Malta, I would get suspended on X, but that's because of the laws of Malta. Not
but I'm talking about, for example, not community notes, community, like the company-specific guidelines.
Yes, they're very lenient. Very lenient.
On X, they are more lenient than others. I still feel like there is an element of bias. There was at least an element of bias.
No, look, there's gonna be. There's gonna be, obviously.
But it's nothing's perfect.
But I think, at least, to be honest, the bias that's coming... there is a bias, obviously. Elon Musk owns Twitter.
That's a big difference. You know of it. So
exactly. That's my point. You know of it. Then you see the CNNs, the whatevers of the world, and you just know that even though they claim to be objective and unbiased, they're clearly not.
Yeah.
But those are the people that people trusted for information before X was kind of liberalized. That's why X is now such a leading platform. But now, anyway,
I would like to make this argument though. With most social medias, even news outlets, it seems to me like they all just create an echo chamber of sorts.
Yes.
I mean, okay, Elon Musk bought Twitter, made it X. Most of the far left people left Twitter.
Yes, they created Blue Sky, was it?
Yeah, I mean, that was also an echo chamber which they tried to make, and it failed terribly. So, I mean, now X has... Well, I don't use X, so I don't know, but from what I can tell, it has become... like the opposite. Like, it has become a sort of right-wing echo chamber.
I don't think so. I use it every day. Listen... The vast area. It's true that there was an increase in right-wing
of course,
supporters using X. That's a given. I think if there was a survey which was conducted before Elon's acquisition, the vast majority were Democrats, and then when Elon acquired it, it's like something 47%, something like that. 48% are Democrats, 47% Republicans, and others say there's none. I think this was posted on CNN like a few weeks ago. I think exactly before the election. The thing is that obviously on every platform there like when you look at TikTok, when you look at YouTube, when you look at Instagram, the vast majority of content which gets pushed. You look at the trending page on YouTube, all they put is talk show hosts, like Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel. When they posted the podcast of Joe Rogan with Donald Trump, they censored it. If you try to look up Joe Rogan podcast Donald Trump, it wouldn't even come up in the recommendation.
Full podcast, you'd get clips from it, and then to find the actual full podcast, you need to go on Joe Rogan's channel.
If you ask me, that's...
I tried it.
It's ridiculous.
As well. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
But not only is it ridiculous, it's election interference.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's borderline illegal at that point.
Sometimes you run out of words to describe the type of stuff that has been going on, especially in the United States. The shame is that over here in the European Union, when you look at who controls the Commission and like the establishment parties in the Parliament, in the European Union they still have this control over the people, which in America they've rebelled against. Now you're seeing an increase of right-wing parties in the European Union, and like I said, I don't think it's something... You guys know who Phidias is, I'm sure you guys know who he is. Yes. I think that guy... I thought it was just some dumb YouTuber, a la Logan Paul type of, I used to really not care for these YouTubers, including Logan Paul, but now I'm seeing the job they're doing. This guy, Phidias, he's bringing people involved in politics. Even me, I whenever I'm on TikTok, I always get one of his reels. I think he posts
He
like
posts
one
a
a
lot.
day.
I
He posts a
follow him.
lot.
He posts a lot.
And it's really interesting. And he's very objective, very unbiased. Like he just tries to engage Europeans and Cypriots in a discourse. And I think Europe and the whole entire world in this case needs more politicians like him who directly want to involve their citizens, not these establishment politicians who take, who are backed by the big banks or the big media establishment or tobacco, alcohol companies in order not to pass certain bills, etc. Honesty is the best policy, especially in politics, and you need honest politicians.
I think that's one of the main selling points of Trump, because he is rich. He doesn't particularly need funding, and at the same time he's a guy who will be, at least when I say honest, I mean blunt. He will say what he thinks.
Yeah.
I don't want to say he's perfect.
No, by no means is he perfect.
I want to mention this because when that video of me on Trump Tower went, let's say, viral in this case, people assume that I'm some conservative, some staunch conservative. I'm not at all. I'm on some politics. I'm actually, I think, very, very liberal, but. Common sense policy, man. You don't need to define yourself by a bracket. Like if I think something about freedom of speech, for example, let's take the case of gay marriage. Me personally, I'm very in favor of gay marriage. I don't think the state, for me, at least as long as the state gets out of people's businesses, that in my opinion is a good thing. I would consider myself more of a libertarian.
Yes.
And I think libertarian is the most common sense ideology. Of course, I have elements from different types of ideologies, let's say that in this case for lack of better use. But the way that people attack you.
You can't just
for one thing you believe in, and they try to define you by it.
You can't,
I think
you can't just label, because a person can have there's 10 different issues that a person can have opinions on, and on all those opinions they can have differing ideologies. You can have a very progressive view of abortion and then a very conservative view of economics.
Exactly.
It doesn't make you either progressive or conservative.
Exactly.
That's what the spectrum, it's a bit weird.
Yeah, I think that's the problem of labeling people. You can't fairly label someone.
No. About you mentioned Fidias and you mentioned Maltese politician, or just politicians in general being like him. I was on a panel I think a month ago for sort of the whole, well, not all the MEPs were there. There were the Labour MEPs and Roberta Metsola was there, and they had a panel afterwards with the Labour MEPs, and they tackled Fidias and they tackled making reels maybe and making content for.
What was?
But they're not good at it. I've seen them, and they're really bad at it. I'm sorry, but they're really bad.
The best, in my opinion, the best is, and this is an element of bias, Thomas Bayada. He's
good.
He's doing a good job at it.
I wouldn't say like he's
not
perfect, because obviously these people are bound by their party. They're like, they act like. Thomas is a really good boy. I really like Thomas. He's one of.
I think me too.
I gave him a really good number, to be honest, in this election, and I swore that I wouldn't vote for the Labour Party, but I gave him a number because I really enjoyed the way that he. He engages people.
Yeah,
this guy, no one knew him before, and then
he had a good campaign.
That he really did well.
He had a really good campaign.
But when it comes to reels, man, I'm sorry, but if you're, in my opinion, both the Nationalist Party and the Labour Party are part of the political establishment. I think everyone over there.
Exactly.
And when you're part of the political establishment, you can't have a concept like Fidias does, because there are certain things that the party does not want you to say publicly.
That's
Do you
fair.
think any of these guys will ever make a reel about abortion, for example?
I was going to say they won't. Alex actually made this. He explained a specific. I'm not going to go into it because it was a very long thing. And after explaining something for 5 minutes, a regulation, he said try to put that in a reel, because he was sort of going against it. It's more traditional, I guess. But then you could have someone like Thomas, who is sort of more younger and more progressive and more engaging with you as well. And even, for example, the European Parliament and also the Commission a bit less, but the European Parliament posts good reels, in my opinion, explaining, for example, for the commissioner hearings, there was a reel with Metsola in it. They explained it well. And also going into the thing with free speech, I feel like in Europe it's gotten better. I don't think it's gotten worse.
To a certain point, they're understanding where the world is
now
headed.
Exactly.
But I still think they're doing it. Like, for example, the thing I mentioned about X, these guys have been actively trying to to interfere with tax policies and
Yes,
and and social media as a whole.
and the UK as well.
But
specifically
exactly,
with all this.
the UK is you can't even begin to describe. But why do they say these things about X and they don't say the same things about TikTok, about Facebook, about Instagram? I would argue that all of those are 10 times worse than X combined, because X at least has a system of disproving or verifying via community
And
notes.
that's the beautiful thing is the community that does that fact checking. It's not major companies.
Yeah,
that
Exactly,
say that.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
That lobby politicians. Because okay, I'm not saying that Reuters gets things wrong, or intentionally gets things wrong.
But they do.
Obviously,
They do at
sometimes
times.
they will, because that's human error.
Yes.
But then there's times where they get things wrong that you can literally spend 2 minutes on a laptop and know that it's wrong, know that it's false. Yet that's what's promoted, and that's what really angers me about all of this misinformation and disinformation cries, because half the time you're not talking about actual misinformation and disinformation. You're just talking about opinions you don't agree with.
I'd like to bring up a point on this and then relate it to Malta. And this is something that I've been saying for a very long time, as long as I can remember that I've involved myself in politics. Let's say that.
Quote unquote.
Quote unquote, exactly. So look at the media that we have in Malta. So what do we have? We have a puppet state media, which is not really state media. It's like government-sponsored media, and they say everything that the government wants them to say. Sputnik 2.0, maybe Sputnik Light. You have propaganda channels, which at least are open about being propaganda channels. One is twerking for the Labour Party, the other one for the Nationalist Party. And then you have the traditional gazettes, online media. I would say now, Times, Lovin, Malta Today. All of them. And the thing is, some of them do a good job. But they're all, ideologically, they're all progressive.
Yep.
Or liberal. You don't have a variety of opinion. Even the journalists, they're mostly liberals. I'd like to see sometime, Malta, not with perhaps a conservative media, but
Just alternative.
just alternative media, because
No.
the same lack of trust in media that we've been seeing in the United States and throughout Europe. I mean, we have the same thing over here in Malta. You can't really trust the media. You definitely can't trust the ones which are on TV, because they're terrible and they're biased and they act as puppets. But even though the traditional media, there is that lack of trust, because it's like they all have the same ideology and opinion on everything. You can't really find a variety of arguments. Immigration, one of the top issues this election. Maybe for the past 4 years, it's been one of the top issues, if not the top issue, for Maltese people. How many times do you guys see an article on immigration, which they are, let's say, the tone is critical, or an opinion piece about immigration? You don't really see those. You only see those on Facebook.
You see these statistics.
You see the
That's what-
statistics,
That's what they put.
and some of the statistics. I did a video on immigration, and some of the statistics are either so difficult to find, or they don't exist at all. For example, to try and find the countries which most immigrants come from, they give you the top 10, and they don't give you the rest.
Exactly.
Something like that. It's really there is not enough transparency in data over here in Malta. But more than that, there is not enough transparency in the media, and that's a shame. Maltese people don't really use X, or the people that use X, they just use it to follow Taylor Swift or football. But and you have Facebook, you have these groups like Are You Being Served, this Salotto, Welcome, as well, infiltrated by the partisans, and Coach Battebecki, which no one needs. So there's not really anywhere where you can find anything which you can actually say, okay, this is as unbiased as possible.
What
No,
I find genuinely troubling is that, for example, one of the major publications that I really, really don't like, and I'm not going to say the name, but I will tell you later. I probably already told you. Whatever.
Good.
But and I notice that they put opinion articles, or even foreign news articles, that for one clearly show a lack of research done into a set topic. That's one thing, and for two, when you look at the reactions from people on these posts, like on Facebook, they would get mostly haha reactions, because people are like, this is complete BS, essentially. And further to that is on their website, where you where people post comments. I know people personally who have had comments removed for valid criticism, who are not offending anybody and clearly pointing out that this journalism is not being done at the quality that you should have journalism being done. So I agree with you that there's clearly a bias and there's clearly not a ethical mechanism of journalism. But further to that, I think that there is a thirst for a better quality of journalism, because you see people I think are fed up. It's just that there is no one to speak for them at the moment.
You mentioned this media house, which I think I know who they are because of the way you describe them. There's another media house. I won't say their name as well because there are some people which are not famous and I don't want to make them famous myself. It's really ridiculous. They portray themselves as a unbiased media house. And you know who the journalists who are working for them are? PN local councillors, and they want to pass themselves off as unbiased. They go do these vox pops always in favor of, not just because it's PN, because even if it was Labour, you know, I would say the same thing. Emma, you look at these things. Literally local councillors from a political party portraying themselves as journalists, and then they come to the people and they say, oh, we're unbiased. Or else, you know, they have some type of political prejudice against an individual or a group of people, and they would deliberately use that platform in order to attack these people because they just don't like them themselves. You know, it's really ridiculous. The media houses, you know, I think it's a shame that, and I've experienced this myself with Lenhek, that you have content being pushed to people like, you know, Love Island, or, you know, other ridiculous stuff, which of course you need to report about sometimes.
Now we have Big Brother coming.
Bro, is it?
That's gonna be good.
You know, some of these things are good. These are, in my opinion, these are good. But at the same time, you know, some major corruption scandal breaks out.
Yeah.
50 likes, 100 likes,
Exactly.
and then you post about Love Island, 2,000 likes, 3,000
Yes.
likes.
I mean, that's just what the people want.
That's the people, you know, but you need to educate the people.
Yeah, exactly.
And these have the power to educate people, and they don't do it, and that's the shame.
Well, yeah, even press freedom in Malta, I have it in front of me from the Press Freedom Index in 2024. We are 73rd from 180, which we climbed 84, from 84 till 73.
We are the worst. In Europe,
second to last.
behind Greece or Hungary, one of them.
I think it's Hungary.
Yeah, we always shift. Once we were dead last behind Hungary, and once like we were third from last behind Greece.
How
and
is the
Hungary.
Press Freedom Index calculated though? Does that include
State media, I think.
But does that also include
I did a report about it.
independent like social media presence?
I think the statistic is
Press
about
mainly.
press
freedom.
There was an interesting statistic about state media,
As
where
well,
you
we
have
can-
4 different brackets. I don't recall them all, but like the most grievous one was editorial independence. Malta fails all 4 categories, including editorial independence. How can you have a state media without editorial independence? I think the ideal should be to have a state network as the BBC is, or as RAI is.
That's a problem with Malta.
You know?
When a party gets elected in Malta, and this could be someone could fact check me here or say, but when a party gets elected, they get most broadcasting services to them.
Of course.
They own everything.
And
That's a problem.
they use it intentionally
Exactly.
to weaponize them against the opposition.
Exactly. That's a problem
You know?
with the system in Malta and the biparty state.
Yes.
It's a very big issue, and it comes to what you guys said, that there's not really anything. It's either red or blue.
And does the opposition speak out against it? No, of course they don't.
Because
Of course, because they will do the same
Exactly.
thing. And that's the shame.
They don't have to.
That's the two-party establishment
Exactly.
here
That's
in
what.
Malta.
That's
No one
my
wants to do
point.
anything about it.
Yeah, that's my point.
Exactly.
They help each other. After all, if say the opposition decides to try and amend the laws and try and fix the media issue, they're just gonna ruin
I
it
want
for
to
themselves.
fact check myself. They do say something about it when obviously they are the target, but when the time comes, and listen, if you are elected once again, you know, and you're back in government, will you fix it? They don't give you a straight answer. You know that.
Oh, they go around it.
Exactly. That in itself is it says a lot.
The thing is, to be honest, I actually don't necessarily believe that state media is necessarily a bad thing, and I'll make a point being that. Look, I think there's a definitely something useful in the state having its own kind of channels to communicate its message directly.
I know what you're going to say.
That's obvious, I think. Then again, they can kind of do that through social media and like normal television stations. They don't really need to have their own channels, but. And the same thing goes with the party stations. You know what you're getting with the party stations. Don't expect, objective journalism. My problem more is that these independent news sources, than the many we've mentioned already, as you said, they have kind of the same opinion. There's no alternative there. Yeah. So even if you want to make that argument, okay, so state media is bad, party media is bad, and independent media is bad, then what is good? There's nothing particularly that people can flock towards, apart from citizen journalism. That is a whole other story where people take matters into their own hands. Like, to some degree, that's what you did. Because, look, nobody was going to give Norman Lowell an interview. You did. And it went probably more viral than if it was on TV. Anyway.
I mean, you could say so, I think.
But when you look at it, people need to take responsibility and kind of, not the ambition, but the initiative to do things themselves. Because if they don't, nobody's going to represent you. Because guess what? If what you're promoting is unpopular, you're done for anyway.
Yeah, I feel like in Malta it's difficult to have a good sort of, not just state media, just a good media source. I feel like
it needs to be transparent. I think transparency is the most important issue.
But
I was looking at the statistics, which I forgot the body which releases them, but they were like most watched media in Malta. John Mallia podcast was one of the top ones, and I think you could make an argument that John Mallia podcast is not as popular as it used to be like a year or two ago, but it still is over there, and it's much more trusted than the traditional media is, or than the establishment media is.
Because there's authenticity behind it.
Exactly, and that's what people want. That's what people want to see.
I would argue that like one of the issues, since you're with us, I will talk about something which I saw regarding Lenhek. When you interviewed Simon Busuttil, I remember one made an article being like, oh, he's back, he's showing himself, and they were practically attacking you, an independent creator, purely for having interviewed Simon.
I'm really glad you brought this up. No one ever brought this up with me before, and then I was when that video article came out, I was gonna post something about it, but I really didn't want to give any attention to it, The way that they framed Simon Busuttil in that video was so terrible. Listen, Simon Busuttil is no perfect politician. He has many flaws. He had a very flawed 2017 election campaign. But come on, they cut out parts intentionally, and it was like Kamala Harris 60 Minutes interview. Worse, they cut out parts so terribly. They made him seem like he's pro-war. They made him seem like he hates Labour. In the same interview, he said, I love Labour supporters because they are also Maltese. That they didn't bring it into the clip, obviously. It's such intentional framing, man, which I can't believe people actually watch them.
That is
I can't believe
propaganda.
I can't believe it. It's and they always draw this parallel for some reason with him and Gonzi. They always want to mention Gonzi. Ħasra sadan. Simon Busuttil, he works in Brussels. I had messaged him 2 months before. I told him, listen, Simon, I know you're out of politics, but you're one of the politicians I grew up with, and I would really appreciate if we could do this interview. The guy gave me other I will mention this later on. There was a politician which gave me 10 minutes. 10 minutes. If you look it up, you can look at who it was. Simon Busuttil gave me an hour and a half, and he was out of politics. I think that guy, the way they defamed him is really, really terrible. Really terrible. He's not perfect, but there was a smear campaign against him from the Labour Party, and he couldn't. He remained with this image, and it's really unjust.
That's, I think, the danger with whoever controls media, because who controls media essentially controls the perception of people.
Exactly.
That's what we were taught in journalism. I guess the medium is the message. Whoever controls the medium is sending you the message. It's not you're not getting the full sense of what someone is trying to say, especially when interviews are cut out like that. It's pure propaganda, and the weird thing is that people
don't get me wrong. Ned does the same thing.
No, of course, no. We're talking about media that's captured by some sort of agenda, right? But what I can't understand is that people look at it, people believe it, and care nothing to research and actually fact check or be at all skeptical by the messages they're getting, despite the fact that they can fact check themselves within an hour and a half of watching an interview. I mean, how lazy can you be to just take a headline, believe it completely, and not realize that it might be actually false? And that's just when I come to my cynical side of, you know, the 1984 George Orwell quote where he says, you know, the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. And if that isn't perfectly, you know, encapsulating what happens with captured media, I don't know what does, you know?
What I was gonna say about this is, you know, and I want to ask you guys this question as well because I think it's really interesting. I do think it's changing. I don't think that I think television is dying. It's dying. And here in Malta, the quality of television, except for these entertainment programs, is terrible. It's really, really bad. And thankfully, people are moving away from the propaganda stations now. And I think, you know, this emergence of podcasts and alternative media, I think is just bound to happen over here in Malta. I think it will.
It's just happening late because Malta does.
Because we're always late,
does things late.
Exactly. But you know, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. But that being said, if there are things which need to be fixed, they must be fixed. Because you always have to set a good precedent. If a political party or someone comes about and proposes that you know, I will reform PBS and make it independent a la BBC or a la RAI, then I think that should be done still, even though there is this new emergence. So I think that's important to.
I mean, actually, I would.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, sure.
About what you said about PBS being classified as state-controlled? I found the brackets. It fails 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. Which one does it not fail?
Wait. It just captured private media. It doesn't fail that, I guess.
Doesn't say much.
It doesn't say much, yeah, exactly. But if it's predominantly state-funded, if it's controlled of the government, started in ownership, and the government has editorial control, it's classified as state media. And according to this was an article published 3 years ago, I must say. But PBS is classified as state media, Malta PBS. Which goes to show.
I want to just point out, because you mentioned like BBC. Now, BBC, I do think if we adopted the same model, it would probably be better. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily looking at BBC as some.
No, it's flawed. It's flawed.
Because to be honest,
it's one of the.
It's not even just maybe you can argue about their journalism quality. What I'm arguing about is that the company of the BBC or organization, whatever, has been involved in scandal after scandal after scandal, and their coverage on basically similar issues, depending on whether whoever's involved agrees with us or doesn't, is so different. It's insane. I mean. Now, this is, I can bring an easy example to my head. For example, Andrew Tate, massively famous, hit with scandals and court cases. Right now, recently, basically most of the evidence was thrown out by a judge because it was obtained illegally, right? Have you guys heard about that from the BBC? No, but what did the BBC do as soon as there was the first allegation? Yeah. I mean, the interview that they did, the first question was, are you a rapist? I mean, look, if you're trying to be unbiased, the first thing they teach you in interviewing people, especially as a journalist, is firstly, let them finish their answers. I mean, for God's sake, let people finish their answers. 1, and 2, you don't go instantly confrontational in an interview. You do that with a politician, which, by the way, most of like these media companies don't do, because, you know, they're basically getting the money from the same people, right? And then you just you hear scandal after scandal. I mean, the Jimmy Savile issue, the Philip Schofield issue, the coverage of, and you look at BBC, and I'm like, I can't trust BBC.
Yes,
either.
You're right. You're completely right on this. I think the BBC is also. It falls under the category of establishment media worldwide, you know, a la CNN, MSNBC, etc. But if you asked me, in Malta, if I had to pick the lesser of two evils, if it's Sputnik or if it's BBC, I'd rather have BBC than Sputnik. Well, let me put this point out. We had Sharabank in Malta. You know, Sharabank, so there are people who love Sharabank, there are people who hate Sharabank. But we had Sharabank, we had something. I was doing a report when I was working with Lovin. I did a 3-month internship over there. And it was about state media itself. And I bought the case study of Jean-Paul Sofia, the entire timeline. Did you know that before jump Paul Sofia's veil, ġifieri, the same day where the Prime Minister did the U-turn and asked for a public inquiry, they did not even bring Isabel Bonnici once on TVM, not once, afterwards. 2 weeks afterwards, or a week and a half afterwards, they brought her after everything settled down. But during the peak of it, absolutely no coverage. If there was Sharabank, and Sharabank famously, you know, the TVM used to try to interfere, and I think at times they would manage it, but I think at times they would not. But I have no doubt in my mind that if there was Sharabank today in Malta, that there would have been at least an episode or two about this Jean-Paul Sofia case in the heat of it. There was no public discourse, even the way that TVM reported about the case. You look at the way, the contrasting way in which they report the Prime Minister and which they report the leader of the opposition. I wrote an article about this. So the way they speak about Robert Abela, Robert Abela, you know, they try to make him look very firm and very, you know, trustworthy. And then with Bernard Grech, he alleged, he said, you know, stuff like this. And it's very easy to see the way that they frame it. But like to the average Joe, people would not notice these things.
Yeah,
obviously.
Exactly.
And it's, I refer back to this point. When this type of stuff comes from the state media, from the authority which is supposed to represent the people, you have a very serious problem, a very, very serious problem, and it's no wonder that we're so far behind in the press freedom list over here in Malta.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the funny thing is that the people that we elect to represent us work for us, supposedly. And when you realize that all they do essentially is lie and manipulate facts to kind of to put themselves in a better light, you realize they clearly don't work for us, because whether or not we have the mandate to kick them out of office, that's never going to happen, mostly because there's way too much establishment, you know, power behind.
Malta needs a leader or a party or someone.
I think someone from within, though. It has to be someone from within.
I don't think there is any quality within. I'm sorry. I think
agree with
there are good people. I think there are people which you know, they're obviously very good crafted politicians, but they're not honest politicians. They are you know, encapsulated in this establishment political party bubble. You know, if you were to show me both of the political parties, the major political parties, I can't point out one visionary or one reformer which actually wants to get this stuff done for our country. And it's such a shame. You have people like Cassola, I think recently, I don't know if you guys saw this, he posted that there was this Malta Today article confirming his intentions for a new party. I respect Arnold Cassola a lot. He's one of the great, people who always fought against the political establishment. I think he's a bit too old now. I think, you know, he really should make some space for someone else. But at least there is someone who is trying to do it, you know? And if you had to give me a choice between the two establishment parties which have basically done everything in their power to remain in power and an outsider option, I would always choose the outsider in this case, because this country needs a vision, this country needs progress. We need to really start talking about, not just with regards to media, everything. Infrastructure, public transport system.
My
really
point was to make that, okay, there could be a third party candidate and they could get in and do a lot of good things, but I think to change the things that actually matter, meaning state broadcasting laws and, you know, when it comes to those sorts of things, I think it would be incredibly difficult to get a third party to fix legislation.
Right.
That's why I'm saying you need to have someone from the inside
but
who
there
kind
is no
of...
one, that's the problem.
No,
there
but this is
no
the thing. This is the thing. Let's say, I mean, this is hypothetical and it's kind of my glass half full kind of optimism. But there would have to be someone who rises to the leading roles or role of a party who is in power, who then kind of has the power to actually change things. Now, is that ever going to happen?
I don't think
Probably
they would
not.
let him. They wouldn't let him from
See,
within.
They would not.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
But no, this happened. I mean, the Nationalist Party, a few years ago, they had Dalia, who was an outsider. He entered the party.
They destroyed him.
He was made leader of the party through a vote of the the party members. What did that lead him? The establishment of the party worked against him.
The establishment.
Now, the establishment.
Can I say this very quickly? And that's why no one else will ever try, because they know that they will face the same obstacles that Dalia faced that first time. It's a great disrespect to the electorate when you have a leader. This Dalia is very flawed. He's not one of my favorites, lanqas. Emma, but he was elected democratically by the will of the PN members. How can you try to oust a leader that is democratically elected? This is basically the inverse of Kamala Harris, who had no primary and was elected by the establishment, basically. It's ridiculous, man. How can you have a major political party which functions like this?
The Democrat Party, mind you. That's very ironic.
Exactly. Yeah, even worse. Even worse.
Yeah, they've actually got 0 votes.
Wow. I don't know what they were thinking.
I don't side with one side or another in American politics, but that just rings some bells. It has to ring some bells.
Of course.
It's not democratic.
The funniest thing is about all that is that with the whole Trump team, there's RFK who initially ran as a Democrat. There's Tulsi Gabbard who initially ran as a Democrat. And the only reason that they're now with Trump is because the Democrat Party was like, no, we're not going to have primaries. That's it. It has nothing to do with their policies. It literally basically has nothing to do with because we're conservatives or whatever. I wouldn't say RFK is a conservative. I wouldn't say Tulsi Gabbard is a conservative. I would probably say actually Trump isn't necessarily a classic conservative either. But point is, it's a reaction. It's a reaction to a system. We're going to have this at some point in Malta. The pendulum always swings back. So we will see whether it will be actually beneficial, it will actually work, or even if they actually get into power. Because realistically, the deck is so stacked against them. I think the American political system is probably much better equipped for like these types of people to get power, especially through certain mechanisms.
I disagree with you, Tom. I think that people make out, it's difficult as a third party. Look at the surveys. Our age. 55% don't want to vote. 55%. Other age brackets like 30% or 25%, Never ever in our history had we ever had, like, post-independence, have we ever had a situation like this. Today you have social media.
But I don't think it's that simple, because you're saying...
let me tell you.
Talk to your mic, Miirko.
Sorry about that. Let me tell you, there is the situation where, like, in order for someone like that coming from outside to work, you need to have someone who is strong. You have someone who is a reformer and someone who is a visionary. Right now, there is no one like that in Malta. You could argue that Cassola is to a certain point. He was a visionary maybe 15, 20 years ago now. I think, times have changed, He still raises the best points, in my opinion, but times have changed. But there was never a strong leader to do something like this. I think, if a strong leader ever comes about, who is tired of the political establishment, then I think he will and knows how to communicate effectively. By the way, none of the major parties today know how to communicate effectively anymore. I think it would be not as difficult as they say to win. It would be a challenge.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with the premise of what you're saying. What my difference is that you just said 55%, was it, that people don't want to vote?
Of our age bracket, I think.
Right, okay. You cannot guarantee that any third party would kind of fit.
No, of course.
It does make it. I will agree with him. It would make it more attractive for me, especially who I don't
No,
side
of
with
course,
anyone.
of course it would. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but firstly, okay, you can't have a party / whatever, like independent candidates that only criticize and say, I'm going to fix this, but then don't promote or propose other legislations which are based on maybe more right-wing economic policy or more left-wing economic policy. After all, when you're in power, you have so much more to deal with. It's not just the state broadcasting, for example. So that's one thing. Secondly, for example, my thing with Cassola is I don't particularly actually agree with his politics. I agree wholeheartedly with his skepticism and criticism of the political establishment.
You're basically the same as me, to be honest.
But when it comes to the political policies, I wouldn't say I put myself in that camp. So in fact, I wouldn't actually vote for Cassola.
But I would vote for him just because it's different.
Exactly, that's it.
Yeah, okay,
It's
but
different.
if a lot of people do that, and then he gets elected, and people didn't actually look at the policy
But if he gets elected, he won't get elected by himself. He'd have more people with him. So how much damage would he quote unquote
I'm not necessarily talking about damage.
Not damage. I'm just saying it. How much would he change How significant would
That's
it be?
fair enough, but my point is, if you're just voting for someone for the sake of he's not the others, you have to look at it deeper. I think there needs to be more like Cassola
But let me
from
tell you-
different ideologies.
But you send a message.
Yes,
To
you do.
both of
Yes,
them,
you
you tell them, listen, you're not indestructible. You can't do
Exactly.
what you want anymore. You have real opposition against you, even if it's anyone, not just Cassola. I'll tell you who I really like. Maybe a bit controversial. I really like Franco De Bono. I think Franco De Bono should open his own party.
We've heard, yes.
And I think Franco
think it's known.
I'm glad it's known. I think if that guy opened his party, I think it would be a great success because, I think the Maltese people in general are tired of seeing like more of the same from both current party leaders, which I think to most people, they don't resonate. Even if you look at the approval ratings, they don't do particularly well. I think that if you have someone who actually is not afraid to say it, in Malta especially, we know how people resonate over here. I think it would be a great success. But I don't think he's willing to do it. So.
And you don't blame him, to be fair.
No, you don't blame him. He has a great career.
Because to enter that sphere, knowing that everybody in the most powerful positions in the country essentially hates you, I mean, you need to have guts to do that.
I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, Franco as a person still keeps contact with a certain faction of the nationalist party.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Okay, but then how do you not fall back into the same issue of
That's it.
controlled by party establishment?
That's the thing. You always fall back into it. you know?
Yeah.
That's why, and it's difficult to
They
beat.
would never let him back. They
no,
would never let him back.
I feel like he lost lots of credibility
No.
with what he did in the end.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was like he made mistakes, obviously, but I think the way they treated him, it was very shady and suspicious. But
That's a recurring story.
yes, but I don't think he would be there's no way. For example, we could see him as leader of the PN. Because they won't allow it, It's the same, like you mentioned Dalia before, It's the same
If
story.
you're asking me, if Joseph Muscat still has a chance to reappear, I think everyone can have a chance to reappear. So
Joseph, for
realistically,
sure.
I think he will probably.
I think so.
apart from the fact that we all probably think he will, but
he probably will
if he
as well.
if he can,
Yeah,
why
anyone
couldn't
can.
Franco? That's my
If he
point.
can, why can't you?
But very.
Joseph comeback purely depends on the courts at this point.
Yeah.
I think if he gets liberated from, or I think if he gets acquitted of the charges,
Yeah.
I think there is no doubt
No,
that he will
exactly.
come back. No doubt at all. And
Sure.
that's I think why he was appreciated by Labour supporters at that time, especially before all the corruption stuff came out. It's because he was a visionary. He's a very good orator. He knows how to speak. He engages people.
Immaculate orator.
Oh, he's I think one of the best we've ever had, if not the best. And by time, you look at other people who are potential leaders, and you look at the prospect of Muscat. I'm speaking if I were a staunch Labour supporter. I think he would be
I think
their main, target.
I think there's probably a yearning for him to come back from Labour supporters.
I feel like the fact he isn't the lawyer as well helps him.
Yeah,
You can
perhaps.
relate more to him.
If he gets acquitted only, though. If he gets
Yeah.
acquitted
Yeah.
only, because if he doesn't,
We'll see. We'll
see.
see. There's time.
With that.
Said, we're gonna have to conclude the episode here. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Miirko for coming on.
thank you.
And I guess we'll talk to you next time. Stay tuned.
Ciao, ciao.